Hey everybody, I know this past summer that I did my little Funny Friends series, and one of my favorite guests is the very, very funny Jeanne Robertson, and she was kind enough to come back and do a little holiday check-in for us and let us know what's going on in her life. Hi Jeannie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you? Two Southern accents going at it. We'll never get through this. It's great to see you. I'm hearing great things. You're busy as you can be during this COVID or any of us. So good for you.
Yeah, that's same with you. I mean, you're doing all you can do. I mean, what else can we do except just try to keep social media coming and, do what we can. Right? Are you
Right.
writing?
It takes, I've been writing, trying to write new material, but I did one of those live streaming shows. And the funny thing is, I realize now I need to tell a story about a year before I feel confident enough to film it. So I didn't use a whole lot of those. They're just not quite ready without getting to try them out in front of an audience. But I'm doing other things. We had the book come out in, I guess, June, somewhere in there. And then we decided to do an audio copy. Do you know Patrick Henry?
Yes.
So we priced it and we decided we didn't want to pay that. And because he said I could do it in, so I had taken my son's room and made it into a closet because if he comes back now, we're going to block him. He's in his 50s. And, and we recorded it. So it came out this week. And of course, everybody said, well, Jeannie, you should have had it come out in October. We know that. We know that. But we didn't get it out in October or November, but it's out. So that's good because a lot of people said, my mama can't read. She can't see to read. And we've got it out in a CD version. And of course, with me, with my accent like yours, it's 7 hours and 20 minutes. It's probably about a 6 hour book. But when I was reading it, I got more and more Southern and started adding stuff in. So we did that project and we did a streaming project. And this whole COVID thing is so bad everywhere, but every state has a different approach. I did 7 shows between Thanksgiving, Halloween, and then the middle of November in South Carolina. None in North Carolina, none in Tennessee. I mean, different places are different things, and they limited the number that could come in. And I thought I write a monthly column, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could work ahead instead of every time it rolls around saying, "Oh my gosh, that's due today." So I'm trying to do all of that too, and the office could be cleaner. So there you go. So yeah, I'm doing some stuff and working on some material, and I'm meeting people. And I have this Saturday show that I think we've done 40 now, and I said I would do it as long as the COVID was out there. I thought it'd be 8 weeks.
Uh-huh.
I spent no, it's gonna probably be, but you're gonna be my special guest coming on next month for a whole hour, and people will be asking questions and everything. So I'm looking forward, and I think if everything holds up, you're gonna actually come here and be live on the back porch.
I am. I can't wait. I would rather do that as do it this way if possible. And so, we do the best we can with all the Zoom stuff, but to me, it's just not the same as being there.
And we go to dinner the night before, a whole bunch of
Right.
us. We're in this business, so that's fun. Now we have to COVID and do all that, and we always do what we're supposed to do.
Sure. We
But
all
how about you? What are you doing? Lots of stuff.
I'm doing lots of stuff, just trying to keep up with the social media. I've done a couple of shows in South Carolina, same thing with social distance and half audiences and all that. But I've been writing, but it like you said, you think it's works in your head, but until you put it on its feet, it's hard to tweak it
It's
and get
not
it.
ready.
It's just not ready, you know.
You
So
know, I've never filmed a DVD, and I've got 9, and you probably have 100. You could, your material is that good, and you have so much. But I've never filmed one that the next week in a show I added a line, and I said, "That's not on film." And so you just need that time. That's one thing I've noticed that's different. And I collected a lot of ideas to work on. So I know that you're doing the same. We have now my, you can tell me if it's the same for you. My January shows and February shows, except for one, are postponed.
Yes.
Everything's being pushed. And sometimes I think just postpone them till fall. I mean, because they have moved them 3 times or 4 times. And then in some of the cities that have had trouble, the people who follow me aren't going downtown to the theater if it did click off. But maybe with the vaccination and all that, we can see. I was laughingly told somebody this morning, I don't see a light at the end of a tunnel, but I have seen a blink. I see that if everybody will do what we're supposed to do,
And we've come this far. If people just hang in there a little
a little
longer,
bit
do what we're
longer.
supposed to, and get those vaccines, maybe we can be back to normal soon.
Yeah.
You know,
So I feel like people like you and people like um, it may be like me. I don't get the grammar right all the time. But one of the things we can do is help people to find the little bit of humor that's out there.
that's right.
I always say that I wish I could say if you keep a sense of humor or you look for it, it'll solve your problems. That is not true. It never is true, but it always helps us get through it. And you and I do have a platform and a lot of these other people too that we can step up and do that a little bit. So
Absolutely, and I know that you bring joy to so many people, and I try to do the same because it would be a dark day if there was no humor.
that's right. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
And the I don't even say the American public, the public rises to the occasion. The things that come across on the internet are hilarious sometimes. I say, why didn't I write that?
I know.
Why did I do that? You know, and so it just shows you that if after the shock of everything, and then of course some people having to deal with the worst of everything, but some people, without poking fun at anybody, will rise to the occasion and send some of the funniest things I've ever seen across the internet about the COVID.
I
You know,
know it's so funny, and you're right. I'll look at things and go, I should have thought of that.
I know.
But coming
I,
from someone who does this for a living, I think that's like the highest compliment when someone else comes up with something and you go, man, I wish I'd written that.
that's right. And I tell you one with me, one of the first times I heard you, I went to see when you were in Southern Fried Chicks a lot. I went to see y'all 2 or 3 times. I was in the area, Biloxi,
Yeah.
but that somewhere
Oh,
outside of Beau Rivage and all that. But I had heard you on Sirius, and this is when I said, "Darn." You remember the Nay Nay Zay Zay? And the other piece of material. I mean, you can know somebody else's material. Doing it is a no-no, but you can learn by watching. And another piece that you wrote that I wish I had written was, "It's going to hit me in the head. They're going to hit you in the head. Your mama saying they're going
Yeah.
no, and now I realize what I'm doing here. Sometimes when I'm on shows, I don't even get to speak. The person interviewing me starts telling me my stories. And I apologize for doing that, but I was just going to say, you hear others and you think, I could have written that. I could have written that, but I didn't. That's the difference I always tell the younger speakers is, but you didn't.
Well,
You,
what's funny about those two bits that you mentioned? Well, the bit on nail number one is that's an old bit, and I thought that has a shelf life. I need to let that go. And several years ago, I was in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Stardome, and I didn't do it because I thought, I need to. It was like a security blanket, and so I thought I need to let that go and do all my new material. And I was accosted in the parking lot by a lady after the show that said, I brought 15 people to hear you do
hear you
that,
say
and
that.
you didn't do it. So I'm standing in the parking lot going, "For time, my what would I be in time?" So,
And the giving them their money's worth.
yes, I'm
Have
up
you
there.
heard me tell? Have you heard me tell the baton story?
The what?
Uh, the baton
Yes,
story.
yes.
Well, I got to the point it had, and you would understand this, and I think a lot of the people who follow you will too. It's 17 minutes. I can tell it and make it 19, or I can make it like 15, but below that, you got to have. And I got to where I could just tell it and be making out my grocery list in my mind at the same time. I just, I was just telling it. Plus, I was writing other stories, and I wasn't putting them in because that 17-minute story took so long, and it was a good closer and all that. And so in '97, I filmed it for Kentucky Public Television. And then I announced, not to the world, we didn't have a way to do that, but I announced to my assistant, who's now been with me 42 years, Tony, and my husband, and my bestest friend, I'm not telling this story for a year. And they said, "You're kidding," because they had sat there so many times and went, "Here it goes," you know. And I said, "I'm not telling it for a year." And that stretched into right at 5 years until a client said, "We paid you to sing that story. We did our whole theme around the baton story. You have to do it." I stood in the room that day walking around thinking, I can't get through 7 because once you start it, you can't get out. And I don't think I can remember it, but she just insisted. I told it all afternoon and told it. But what I found out was when I did that, two things. Number one, it opened up a lot of time for other stories. And that's when I actually put in the grocery store list story.
Oh,
See, I mean, it pushed you to do it. And secondly, about 5 years ago, when we both do a lot of theater shows, I didn't until 10 years ago. And I began to go back and back and back. And the theater shows were taking an hour and a half worth of material. So I began to think, what can I tell? And then I thought, let me bring it back. And
mhm.
when I brought it back, I really told it better. I mean, I worked on it and got it. The story's the same, but you were fresher.
Right.
I've gotten where I could really be telling the story and thinking, now when I leave here, I'm going to go to, and I
Oh,
just
yeah.
gotten
And
on.
that's when you know you're kind of you need to let it go, and even
Yeah,
if you bring it back so that you can have to think about it again, because I do the same thing. Are you ever like doing a bit and flipping through your Rolodex, like, well, maybe I'll jump over there, and when I do that sometimes. I'll be in the middle of
well,
thinking, I think I'm gonna go to the planted a tree story from here. I mean, and I have
yeah.
it planned, but sometimes I just change my mind.
Just do. And I think that's a mark of trying to be a pro, like we're both trying to do. Because if a group of red hatters come into my audience, I have a red hat story. It's a funny story, but it's really funny if they're sitting there. And if I went to Auburn, and you know the Southeast on it,
Yeah.
and if when people come in on the front row in Alabama shirts, I'm sorry, I'm going there. You know, yeah, and they do it just to get me. You know, so the secret is then you just have to say, okay, I just not wasted. I just used 7 minutes that I wasn't planning to use. I got to take something out. If you're doing it, but it's an interesting to watch it. When you come on my show, we got to tell them the backstory of working on material a little bit. They would really, they're asking.
Because I do like have a plan set, but if I walk out and when I assess the room, like if there are um, a lot more men maybe than I anticipated, I might do more sports stuff, throw that in, and I constantly am assessing, even though I have a plan set, but it can change.
Well, I put it this way: you go with everything planned, and then you hope the banner falls off the wall. You hope that the coffee is undrinkable. Everybody's going, like this. So then you can go somewhere with it, but you better go with something planned.
Yeah.
You can't say I'm waiting for something to happen now. Nothing's happening.
And
Uh,
the other bit you mentioned,
somebody's going to answer that. Wireless caller, robocall.
yeah, uh-huh.
Robocall. We thought we had turned everything off and shut the doors and moved all the stuff, but it never fails. Usually this is when my bestest friend opened the door and said, "Hey, I had a few minutes to you." I said, "Oh, I can't talk right now." So, but I apologize for that.
Oh no.
But so when do you start traveling again? Do you have, do you, I don't know.
The next one I'm scheduled for is actually April 3rd. Now I
Yeah.
have
Uh,
I have some March dates on hold that they're iffy. I just don't
yeah.
know. They just haven't officially called them yet, so they're on there. And
Well, and here's an interesting thing. You know Alma Creek. You know Alma
oh
Creek. He
yes,
called and said that he could. Should we schedule a show in Jacksonville, Florida, the day before I'm in Portland, Oregon? Hell, we wouldn't do that in my office. You miss one flight, you don't drive to Portland, Oregon.
that's right.
But it seems that a lot of the ones that I have hope of that blink are in the South, and I can drive. I mean, if somebody, I can get there. And I have flown, one place, and they had an auditorium that seated 600, which they got on purpose, and we had 94, and that was what they expected at their convention. And I flew to Destin, Pensacola, wherever, and but it's just an interesting situation right now. But you can't, no sense in trying to set something up that you can look at and say, if COVID were not here, I can't go from there to there in one day with no backup and driving to where. It was like one time I said to Tony, I said, just get the program where it was on the map was way over like in Midland, Texas. West Texas. And I said, listen to this statement. I said, just get me to Dallas tonight. If there's a problem, I'll rent a car and drive. She said, you're not driving from Dallas to the end of the world. You just have to remember that. Yeah. Well, see, I grew up in North Carolina and you grew up in Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Where'd you play ball?
UT Chattanooga.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So we can drive a lot of places because I'm back home, and we can drive a lot of places, but you don't have to count on all the flights running on, because if the flights aren't full, they cancel now. I mean, in the money, they can't do it. So I'm lucky that some of the places that have opened up and aren't having riots are in the South.
Yeah.
So very few places. Thank you for South Carolina.
Yeah.
So
You talking about playing basketball. I see you have your Carolina blue on, but one.
it's green. I don't wear Carolina blue. Did you not know my husband was captain of the Duke basketball team?
Oh no, I didn't realize that. I knew he played basketball, but I didn't realize he was captain of Duke basketball.
Well, he could have gone to Carolina or got the letters, all that. But I think that this is going to break the heart of current day parents. His Wake Forest scholarship was worth value of per year $3,000 and some dollars. We're old, and then he could have gone to a state school, Carolina, and I think it was a little higher, about the same. And then Duke was not 5, but approaching it. And he thought, well, nobody in his family had ever been to college, and he said, must get a better education at Duke. Look how much more they're charging. It's crazy. And he went and he graduated. This is a novel idea because you follow sports like I do. He graduated on time in 4 years.
Wow, that's
because
excellent.
They couldn't afford to go another semester. It would have put his family in a bind. And so they were just such the best people in the world, but money was just different. So, no, I don't have on my Carolina blue. This is actual aqua. Have you noticed? Do you have on red?
I have on red, yes.
You have better equipment than I have because it looks red. And one day I wore burnt orange for Auburn. And the Georgia people just could not stop thanking me for wearing red. I said, I didn't have on red. You know Debbie Childers?
Yes.
And you wore red for Georgia. Why did you wear red for? I said, I do not have on red.
And everything I wear doesn't mean something. Stop reading everything.
It doesn't matter. So I follow Elon basketball here, but just when they're getting ready to open it up and play, and they were going to play Duke and Carolina and all these nearby places because of the cost of air travel, and everybody, and then somebody got sick, and that was that for a while. So just all of those games were. So we'll get through it. We will get through it. Where's a pencil? We will get through it. Chalk, chewing wood.
one of the few times in my college career that we actually played a game that was like the women played before the men. I mean, like we used
Yeah,
to do in high school, but in college we never did that. But at North Carolina was one of those times, University of North Carolina, and the the women played.
in Chapel Hill. Were you in
Yes, in
Chapel
Chapel
Hill?
Hill,
And
and
Sylvia Hatchell was coaching them.
uh,
Sylvia Hatchell was their coach.
Sylvia hadn't taken over yet. It
But
was
then you're looking good for your age. Because,
Sylvia took over just a couple years after that. And
uh,
Sylvia was at Francis Marion at that
yes, yeah.
time. We
I
played
know.
Francis Marion, and did you know that Sylvia Hatchell went to bat for me to be named All American? She was a huge uh, contributor to that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah, she really was, and she played at she was Coach Francis Marion, but in the voting, she was a big advocate for me. But anyway,
But no, let me tell you about being an advocate because although I'm not a Carolina fan, um, actually the coach at Elon is Charlotte Smith. Do you remember she dunked the ball?
right, right,
And
right.
I loved her first press interview. She said, "I'll answer your first question now. Only donuts," because they were going to say, "Can you still dunk the ball?" You know, that kind of. But I was speaking at the WBCA Women's. I'm telling your listeners this, you know, Women's Basketball Coaches Association, and in New Orleans. You might have even been there that year. And I think Tennessee won that year, I believe.
Mhm.
And so I was filming it. I mean, I brought in a camera crew. It was packed, like 2,000 people. And the time came for the lunch to be over. Nobody was in there. I had a camera crew, everybody. And I'm thinking, what in the world? And they sent a messenger that said, the lunch speaker is gone overtime. Just hang in there. We'll get there sometime. So I was beginning to think, okay, half of them will take a break. But all of a sudden, in that empty room, the back door swung open. And you know, Sylvia, she said, "This is the right place. Everybody get in here and get on the front row." It was her team. She had made them come. She said, "We got up and left. She's talking too long. She should have been sitting down, and we're going to sit on the front. Everybody, front row." And then in about 10 minutes, everybody came. But I thought, I barely know you, you know. And of course, I think about 3 months later, she called, "Remember me? I need you to do a free program for my team," you know. but she took up for me too that day when she showed up and said, "Y'all sit on the front row. We're going to have people on the front row from North Carolina." Of course, I don't know where the girls were from, but as far as she was concerned. So,
Right,
so I'm not a Carolina fan, but because Jerry was, of course,
right.
and I'm an SEC fan,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm now an Elon fan. So it just life changes. But
But
yeah,
I love Sylvia, but she wasn't coaching at that time at North Carolina. So we played
first, and then
5 o'clock game before the men's game, and
wow.
I'm sure now, North Carolina has a huge coliseum, but at that time it was not that big of a gymnasium. That
Carmichael. You were in Carmichael, the
okay,
smaller gym, not the
yeah,
Dean Dome.
that's where we were, and so we stayed, of course, after our game to watch the men's game, and Michael Jordan was on
Oh
the
my
men's
God.
team at that time.
Well, I was speaking in New Orleans, and the Final Four was in New Orleans, and it was the year Carolina won it with Michael Jordan, and they were playing Georgetown, and I got a ticket. I mean, I was. We jokingly say that everybody said, "Are you going to the game? You're from North Carolina because you don't know who's going to be in the Final Four till the week before." And everybody's trying to get airline tickets. I said, "I have an airline ticket to New Orleans and I have a hotel room in New Orleans. I don't have a ticket to the game. But you don't know me if you don't think that when I get there, I won't get a ticket to the game." And I've always said, you don't know what awkward is until you're a woman on the French Quarter streets by yourself shouting, "Name your price." And I bought a ticket and got in, you know. So before long, somebody comes up and you get a ticket. Those are good memories. And you know, when sports are given bad names by some people sometimes, I just stop and think how many people it gave leadership skills and opportunities and encouragement, like a 6'2" 13-year-old and you.
Or a 5'2".
That's right. You always stole the ball. People your size would steal the ball from you. Don't dribble it, Jeannie. Don't put it on the floor.
You know, actually, uh, of course, ball handling was my thing, and I played with our center was 6'2", and I remember one time in practice, I passed the ball to Data, and she walked with the ball, and Coach Smitty just chewed me out, and I couldn't understand why I was in trouble. I said, "Well, she's the one who walked with the ball," and he said, "She's not the ball handler. You don't give her the ball until she's in position to shoot." So from that point on, I worked really hard to make sure I got Data the ball at just the right moment for her to score. And it made all the difference in my college career with my assist and everything that I did, because I learned how important it was to get people in position.
Well, and I loved people like with that philosophy. Some coaches who were shooters that just say shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. And I always had coaches who get it in, get it into Jeannie, get it into Jeannie. I mean, but in the same vein, one coach, I said, why can't I dribble the ball? We had gone from dribbling twice to dribbling more to now we're playing 5-on-5. And I said, why can't I dribble? He said, because nobody dribbles from their ear. Boom, 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 boom. I said, okay, I won't ask again. Terrible. But they were good days, and I'm happy young women have some more opportunities. And what's happening to any team, it's happening to all of them right now with COVID. So,
I know. I feel bad for so many, that particularly their seniors, and
oh yeah.
it's just terrible. But don't you feel that sports contributed to your ability to and confidence to get on stage and to do all the things that you've done?
Well, they always said when I went to the Miss America pageant, and people would say, "Well, you just that big runway in Atlantic City, thousands of people. I mean, and you're out there in a swimsuit because that's what you did in those days, and an evening gown and all this." And I said, "But nobody was guarding me. It was a piece of cake." You're walking down, you don't have anybody, after you going after your, whatever, grabbing at your skirt. So
They should add that to the Miss America pageant.
it they always put in interesting facts about each Miss South Carolina, Miss Tennessee, and this is a story on your. I don't remember who the Miss Tennessee was that year, but it was Miss Tennessee that did this. They put in my basketball point average, and it was really high. But I try to tell people that for several years you had a half court, so you never fouled out because you didn't play defense. You played the whole game, and then they stopped the ball at first after each shot and brought it back to the middle. So the time, and you only had three girls shooting. So you take the number of points scored and divide by three, and now you divide by five. So having a high average was not what it is today. It's not the same game. And when we were seniors, two of us were seniors, and one girl was a freshman, and she knew better than to even think about shooting. She was to feed the ball to us.
Right.
I'm joking, but it was in the Miss America write up, and everybody had studied everybody. And some of the girls at the pageant were saying, I read about your, I don't know how you just did that with that big ball. They didn't know a squat about basketball. And then Miss Tennessee came up one day and she said, hey, North Carolina, I saw your basketball point average in high school. And I thought, if she's going to say something about that big old ball or something. And I said, yes. And she said, I just wanted you to know it would never have been that high if I had been guarding you. And we became great friends. Because she said, no, you wouldn't have had that on me. And I said, okay, whatever. So
Tennessee was the last state to go 5-on-5.
I
So,
thought it was Iowa.
well, maybe we were next to the last.
Yeah.
but I played 6-on-6, and my class, my graduating class, is the last class
One.
until it. And I was thinking we were last. We might have been second, but um, uh, anyway, I have to correct you on one thing that you said, that nobody on the forward end ever fouled out.
You did. I just stood there like this and said, "Here, here." I thought I was jumping, but Daddy said, "Not really, honey. You know, you just get your hands up and then hit that spot." You know, there was no running up and down the court.
Because
You fouled out. How many times could you foul out if you
I did a
on
couple
offense?
times, because even though I was the forward, I was on the forward end. If when the rebound came down, I was trying to rip it. You know, I was trying to strip it from whoever got the rebound.
So you could shoot.
I was trying to steal it all the way with the guards taking it to half
I
court.
stand corrected. I stand corrected. I will make sure to put that in if I tell anybody. And then it went to 4-on-4.
No, I didn't play
We
football.
played rover.
Rover. Okay,
You,
I didn't play that.
one got to go across the line, but I wasn't allowed. They didn't want me to foul out because of being 6'2". But then you played. Really, we're playing 4-on-4, and then it went to 5-on-5. And when I coached, very little bit, but when I coached, it was 5-on-5. But what I was told by people, and you don't ever know, and my stories grow, so I try to keep making, you know. But when one of the reasons if Tennessee was last or next to last, what they told me in Iowa was every time I was on a farm radio show out there, they they talked about, well, y'all got girls basketball in Iowa, and I mean in North Carolina said yes we do. Well, we play 6-on-6 here. They still and they said because one more girl got to play. And they said, you fill your high school arenas like we do in Iowa, and then you talk to me. We'll talk to you. And they did. They packed every play. But what happened is the college coaches started saying, I can recruit this young woman who played offense and defense in high school, or this one where I've got to teach offense or teach defense. And
Right.
and they started, it was going into the Olympics and all of this kind of stuff. And why waste a year trying to teach an athlete how to play defense when she had played 4 years of high school ball and hadn't ever played defense? And they realized if the girls got one of the scholarships, you had to give them the advantage of having played 5-on-5.
No, that's exactly right. And the guards in particular were at a disadvantage of not learning to shoot and score, and as you
Oh
know.
yeah, and then you're learning all of that in October of your freshman year, and you could have had somebody who already knew it. I understand that
Plus,
philosophy.
it was more my game anyway. I mean, I just on the open court and running the ball and the press and
Did you run the offense and do
oh
all of that? Yeah, you were the guard.
yes,
You were the guard.
yeah,
Just between us chickens, you were great, weren't you? I bet you
yeah.
were fast. I bet you were fast. I
Was
mean,
being the
really.
key word, you know. And
Yeah.
I have very large hands and feet for my size. I'm 5'2", but I wear a size 9 shoe. And back in the day, I mean, I could palm a basketball. I have really large hands, and that was before the basketball was reduced to
Bottom ball.
it was a
You're kidding.
no, no, and I could palm a basketball. And I ran into someone in the grocery store not long ago, and they said, Karen, I remember when that picture came out of you in the paper, of you palming a basketball. Can you still palm a basketball? I said, what? I can't open a jar of pickles.
I know that's what I can't do. But that, and then I went up to Tacoma. It was the Final Four for women, and I went over. Well, one night I went to state. KYAL had a program at state that she called these professional women all around North Carolina and said, "Our girls are not going to play pro ball. They didn't have it at the time, but they need to know there are things they can do later. Would you be on a group of women that would agree to come, very smart because they weren't attending the games as much then, and a couple of times a year and eat dinner with the team and talk to them about what you do and all that." And so I said, oh, I'm sure, I'll go. And I went over there, and it was fascinating. So afterwards, one night we went out to eat, and it was Kay. And who was who ran that whole program? She was outstanding in the NCAA. I can't, but a bunch of us were sitting there, and I said, and Tony was with me, my assistant, and I said, "Hey y'all, if any of you know, do you know anybody connected with the women's Final Four?" And I saw them just sit there, and nobody said anything. And I said, because I know that the women's basketball is at the same time as the Final Four. If you know anybody, and I'm clueless, and I said, if you know anybody who knows anything to do with that, I would speak for free if I could just go and speak and go to the Final Four and go to that convention and just hang around with women who chose that area. Because I was headed that way if I hadn't won that pageant. I would have been a coach anyway. And there was this silence, and they said, "We're in charge of it this year." I did not believe it. And they were dying. They were all sitting there. And so I got to go that year to Tacoma and speak for free. And I had not heard of the Biden ball being smaller. I just hadn't kept up that much. I was so busy. And that year, You're Gonna Die, they announced, well, everybody, regardless of where your ticket is, will you please sit across from where the cameras, it will look like we have a bigger crowd. And for the women. And then within 3 or 4 more Final Fours, you could not get a ticket.
Get tickets.
No. But they asked us, and people got up before the game started and moved and came over, so it would look like we had a bigger.
Like a Colonel Parker move.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're right. There's a woman at Elon named Janie Brown. Her husband was a football coach there, and I think he died he had a heart attack. But she was head of the physical education, and I heard her do a program about all the things that her generation had, because she coached the women one time, and Kay had coached at Elon too. And I mean, but they were the only 2 places she ever coached were Elon and State. But when I just sitting in the second row howling, because it was what we all went through. But she was to move. Everybody get up, please. Professional women, would you please get up, move to the other side, and sit down low where you can be picked up by the camera. And it's both teams, everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm just grateful I had sports.
I played for Sharon Fanning, who retired from Mississippi State a few years back. And she told me years ago about when you came there and spoke at their convention, and how much she loved you.
Well, I appreciate it. I was just like a child in a candy shop. I was thrilled. People would walk by me. The guy from Louisiana State,
Mm-hmm.
who eventually won it. He was I knew who he was when he walked by. I mean, anybody that came by, I on the escalator, I would say, "Oh my gosh, Tony, that's that's so and so. That's so and so." And of course, if you don't follow women's sports, you didn't know those people a lot of times.
Yeah, and Pat Summit, she was a good friend. I used to work all her summer camps, and it was just such a magical time back then.
It was. Well, the Final Four, when the year in Tacoma that I got to go, that this all happened, Auburn was in it, and Pat Summit was in it, and there was a banquet for the 4 teams, and so when I got in, they were going to let me do. I spoke at the Baden breakfast. I spoke at the banquet. I mean, I was there, and you went to a banquet with all the teams, the 4 teams that were left, and the coaches and everything at the beginning of the week. And Pat Summit sat next to me, and her mother was down, and so Pat was just so focused. And her mother said something to me. I don't remember the exact words, and she said, "I hope you can get Pat to laugh tonight. She doesn't laugh once the season starts." She is focused and intense. So because of that, I was so aware with every word that I spoke, whether she was laughing or not. So,
she was intense.
she was the best. You have time for another Pat Summit story? So I went to the Southeastern Conference in Chattanooga. It was in Chattanooga for women for several. And they were giving an award out. And so when I was one of the people being honored. Every school had somebody there. You weren't competing against the other SEC schools. Each school had like an entrepreneur in sports or something.
Right.
And so the minute I got the invitation and they said, you know, you have been going to be Auburn's representative. Tony, who went to Auburn with me, said, I have to have 2 tickets. I said, there are no tickets to the Women's Southeastern Conference. And, you know, it's down there where the aquarium was, you know, Chattanooga better than I. And I said, I can't get you tickets. She said, you can call Auburn and get me 2 tickets. And I said, I can't call Auburn and ask for 2 tickets. She said, they have an Auburn section. You know the people. Jeannie, my aunt so-and-so and her friend are the biggest Tennessee fans in the world. They watch the games together. And they'll die if they can't get in that tournament. And so I said, I cannot do it. So finally I picked up the phone and I said, I am mortified. I called a friend in the department. I said, I'm mortified to ask this. You know, is there any way to get 2 tickets with the Auburn people, like the president and the athletic director and all these people? I said, because these are 2 old ladies and they are Tennessee fans. And so they said, let us work on it. Because everybody isn't there for all the games. You know, they come in, go out, go back to Auburn, come back. And they called back and said, we got you 2 tickets. and so we were there, and I was with left brain, Jerry, my husband. And the 2 seats were empty. Empty. I was lit. They said, where are your friends that are coming? And I said, I don't know. They didn't care squat about who was playing before Pat Summitt. They idolized Pat Summitt. And then all of a sudden I felt a woman tapping me on the shoulder. And she said, we're here. My friend is challenged. She has to be brought in on a stretcher. They brought her in on a stretcher through the dressing room and then up to where we were. I said, has she been to the bathroom? I mean, so we're going to have to do this at the half? She said, no, she's okay there. And they sat down right in the middle of the Auburn and had these orange and white shakers. And it turns out one of them's son was in the nosebleed section. And then when the game ended and they came out to practice at the right moment, like Coach K practiced, Pat entered the gym. And you would have thought, Joan Cronin did this for me. You know Joan Cronin.
Yes.
You would have thought that Jesus had come back as a female and was in Pat Summitt's clothes. I mean, good old Rocky Top, Rocky Top. And these 2 women in the middle of the Auburn section are going nuts. This was on like this Friday night, Saturday night. Good old, and then she walks, and as she walks, I mean, they're in a frenzy, an absolute frenzy.
She's a rock star, yeah. She was.
Yeah, she's a rock. And up here, one of these women's sons has binoculars and is following her around the gym. And she comes down the gym, looks around, comes across the end line, comes up and stops in front of us. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's coming up here. And then finally she saw him move the cord and started coming up, and he's watching. And then it became in front, all the Auburn people, excuse me. She's coming down our row. I'm standing. And she came to them and says, I understand you're fans of Tennessee. He's up there going, she stopped that mama. She has stopped that mama. And the other woman who they came in on a stretcher could not be happier. I mean, it made their lives.
Oh.
So this is how women, Joan Cronin set that up.
Yeah.
And they did that. And the next year on her aunt's birthday, they surprised her that morning on a Sunday with the whole family had come to Chattanooga. And she didn't seem happy about it. And she started saying things like, when is everybody going to be gone? Well, Tennessee was playing that afternoon. Now, when I tell you this, you will not believe this. This is going to grab you. We're laughing now. But she said, I need these people to be gone by. And they had come from 4 states to surprise poor aunt. She was in her 90s, and she said they have to be gone. I watched the game with my friend on the telephone. We can't get around as well. And these people have to be gone. I have to be in my chair. So it got embarrassing. And finally, they told everybody, y'all, you got to go.
She's coming up.
So later, they left. And later, the friend called and said, I can't get her. She died in the chair that afternoon watching the game. And when her friend tried to call her, she couldn't get her. And I said, thank goodness y'all left. She died just exactly like she wanted to be. That's right. Is that not a great story?
That is a great story.
It was, I think we were all lucky that we found something we liked to do when we were younger that led to us to be stronger leaders and do all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
And that shows that even someone who was limited on what they were able to do still died loving
Oh,
the
yes,
thing
her
she was
team.
doing, and that was watching the game on the phone with her friend. Yeah.
So I tell you, you can't make stuff like that up.
Oh, you can.
Oh, no. Well, this is fantastic. So you're calling people that you've had on your show. Who all have you had on your show?
Oh, wow. I've had Leanne Morgan and Jamie Daly and BJ Thomas and Trish Sir and oh, I can't even remember everybody. I'm just pulling a few for the Christmas week to play.
Well, and we have had Debbie Childers.
Oh yeah.
You know Debbie.
Oh yeah.
And we've had LaDonna Gatlin. She's the sister of the Gatlin brothers, and she's very talented. I know some of these people through speaking.
Sure.
Yeah, I was always in the Speakers Association, which met virtually last year.
Oh yeah.
I don't do well on virtual. And then uh, I would like to think this year we would be at our meeting in the big town where we're going. I think it's Vegas, but that's August. You don't know.
You just don't know.
No.
Oh,
So
Henry Cho had him on. I'm sure you've worked with Henry or know Henry.
we have not been able to get Henry yet. But last week we have talked to him, and he's going to let us know. But last week we had Mark Lowry.
Oh yeah, no Mark.
He wrote "Mary, Did You Know?"
Yes, he did.
And but he's also a comedian.
Yeah.
He did the comedy in the Gaithers thing, which
Gaithers.
made me. You know how when you pull up your own YouTube clips to see who's watching, and they're in little squares, he pops up in there every so often. I thought, well, I think he's a baritone. He's a singer. I wonder why he pops up with mine. But then he lists himself as a comedian too.
Oh yeah, I took my mom to see the Gaithers at the Roundhouse here in Chattanooga, and he was on the bill. Yep.
Yeah, he's good. And David Phelps. I don't know these people, but he was funny. He had one of the funniest lines because I said, well, if I had heard somebody ask him. I was studying him last week, and I said that was a good, and he had good lines ready. And one of the lines was, did you have other questions? How did you decide what question you would ask Mary? Did you know your son would walk on or your baby would walk on water? And all, and they said, did you decide? Oh, he said, I had a lot of questions I just couldn't use. But, you make your mind up. And which one said, well, how did you decide which questions? And he said, you put in the questions that rhymed. That's the way I always go. I go through the alphabet, A, B, C. And then they said, but what was the question that you really wished, you could have asked him? And he said, well, did Mary ever go to him when he was a teenager and say, clean up this room? What do you think you were, born in a barn? Yeah. He's funny. This guy is a riot, and he's got some great material.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, so
he really does.
But I thought, well, if this is going to be on before Christmas, I brought my friend. My friend Claus is right here. Can you see him? He's got on a mask.
His mask on.
Somebody said, "How old is that?" And I said, "Okay, my grandson is 26. Is 26 years old. You go buy something cheap. This big thing has been with us." But Merry Christmas to everybody, and Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you want.
Whatever you celebrate.
Respect everybody. We can celebrate it. I guarantee you.
That's
So
right. And before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you if you have any funny Christmas story or funny tradition or anything that's happened at Christmas.
I'm in a different stage of life than you are. I'm 77, and the amount of decorations that you put up in your house kind of go with the older you get. You don't put up as many. The children are grown, and they're not bringing children back now. If they get married and have some children and bring them back, but what I do now is we haven't put up a Christmas tree in 15 years. The kids are in Georgia. You know, we go down there when they were little. But I pay somebody to come over here and put lights all over my outside. And why would anybody think there's nothing inside? I have to get out my Santa Claus. If you put that many lights up all the way around like a horseshoe, your house, in every bush and tree and everything, and I get them to do it by Thanksgiving. So I light up my corner, and people just assume that you are in there decorated to the hilt. And until this year, for 36 or 7 years, I've had a hot dog supper for all the neighbors, serving the traditional meal at Christmas of hot dogs and ice cream sundaes. But 3 blocks, and it's the children. It's a big party. I don't want them to stay all night. You know, we have hot dogs, ice cream, but we all know each other for different ages. I have even been sick on the night of the party, and they just come in and pull everything, put it all out. It's a dumb party. It's a great party, but can't do it, this year.
Yeah.
And the Christmas tree takes up a lot of space on my porch, which is where a lot of people eat. And so I just don't put them up. But everybody thinks, and they leave and they say things like, "Your house is beautiful again this year. It's just beautiful." They hadn't anything up, but they see all those lights when they come in, and I've gotten away with it. And now we had a woman down the street that I would take her a little something every Christmas. And she liked the little miniature whiskey bottles that come. She said, "Do you ever get those little vodkas on the plane?" And I said, "Well, I guess I could get it." This is when they would give them away. She said, "I love those." So I knew to collect a little brown sack load and take them up to her. And every year I would say to her, "Your tree's gorgeous." And it was just gorgeous. And I'd say, I didn't think you could outdo yourself, but I think you have. She had, when you came into her house, an attic that opened up this way and big steps came down. She said, "Jeannie, I have to tie a rope to the top of that tree and throw it over that board up there, and it goes through those 2 doors. I've wrapped a sheet around it, and the next year I lower that rope and put that same tree out, and you come in here every year and say it's even prettier than last year." Don't you just love people when they do those kind of things? And somebody said, "You go to Jeanne Robertson's. She's that speaker. Do you ever go? Do you know? Because people put an extra all if you're on stage.
Sure.
You don't do that to yourself, but they
Right.
do. I say, "What did she serve?" And they said, "Hot dogs." They said, "No, I mean for the meal to the adults. What did she serve?" "Hot dogs." And all I need is a little bit of gas in my car and a credit card. I get the chili at Zach's Hot Dogs. I get the potato salad over here. I get the this there, the that there. I just don't cook. So, but I can throw that hot dog party together.
Well, I can
I can't do it this year.
I
Can't do it.
guarantee you there's not much that I'd rather do than go to a hot dog party.
I
I
know.
love a dog. I mean, I don't eat a lot of meat anymore, but that's one thing. If I go to the stadium or I go somewhere like that, I gotta have a hot dog.
Well, I know what you mean. And then we have a great hot dog place here, and they do their secret chili. So why would I try to make any chili? I'm not going to do anything like that. But I have always found that if you put it out, they don't care. They're just glad to be. People will appreciate being invited, and they'll eat about whatever you put out there. You know, or somebody said, "Do you serve those people drink?" I said, "They'll drink anything you put out there. They will, and the children will. You know, if you have potato salad, you got to have potato chips for the children. And if you get this, you have to have, and the people next door, the only ones in the neighborhood, they got to have sauerkraut. You know, I mean, because of where they're from, they got to have sauerkraut." And they said, "Hot dogs without sauerkraut?" And I said, so for a year or two, she brought her own. And then I said, "I'll get the sauerkraut." You know, but we know, and this is something maybe your listeners, by doing that, um, we, for the first several years we moved in our house, I just waved at everybody that I passed, and I thought, I don't even know these people. Now we know each other. And little children, if there was a problem, they know where they could run. They know everybody too. You just now, yeah, now I'm going to their weddings.
Oh,
You,
yeah.
so, but but we don't sit around in the yard at night talking. I mean, everybody's busy, everybody's working. But at Christmas week, and so I missed that this year. You know,
Yeah,
it's not any fun, but you can't put 50 people in the house. You will be shut down.
that's right.
You will be put in jail, and it'd be dangerous.
And we need to get to the other side of
Are
this.
y'all doing? Are you doing anything for Christmas?
So, our family's not going to get together. I'll go see my mom, of course, and spend Christmas with her. But we're just trying to really be safe. And
I'm doing
I
the same thing.
I would just rather hunker down for a couple more months and get
4 months.
on with it.
Yeah. Well, but again, if you know, if we can keep a sense of humor about it, we try to do that, and we help other people.
That's right.
But we've come this far.
That's the way I feel.
Why
We've
in
done
the
this.
world would we go now? So, but I would suggest you and I right now to all of your listeners, a phone call to a lonely person changes the whole holiday.
That's right.
And we all think about it, and it could be in my small town, the parents of the people I went to school with, because they can't get here if they're still alive. Even the people my age, if they can't get there, and especially this year, can't come home and see their really elderly parents, they're still over there, and we know they are. So
Right.
just a call to somebody to say, "Well, I was just thinking about you. Are you okay?" Makes their Christmas.
And it's something that I try to share with when I'm speaking, done commencement addresses or whatever, is that a lot of people think if you can't do a lot, that it's not worth doing anything. But sometimes the greatest gift is the gift of your time, and you can give that if you can't spare a dime.
Doesn't cost a thing. And yesterday, I was supposed to have one of those tests where you can't eat when you get up, you can't have coffee. I mean, oh, it's just terrible. And you know how then you go and you come out and you're shaking for the coffee.
Right.
And I was up and I was ready to go. And Patrick Henry had come over here because we have a green screen room. He was doing a live something to a Chamber of Commerce breakfast. I mean, we'll do anything. And the phone rang, and I thought, oh no, this is going to be on his live thing. And it was this young woman who had been assigned a task. The machine at the regional hospital, the camera was broken, and she was calling everybody on the list to say your appointment is canceled because the machine is broken, and no, we cannot schedule you again before Christmas. I mean, she had this job, happy little task, and so she said, Ms. Robertson, told me the whole story, and I changed my whole demeanor, and I said, "Are you telling me?" Don't you know? She went, "Oh God, are you telling me that I can have some coffee right now?" She burst out laughing. She said, "Oh, thank you so much. Now I got to call all these other unhappy people. Coffee right now," because that's all I wanted was just a cup of
I
coffee.
just cup of coffee. I hear you.
So I'm not saying I do that all the time, but if we can think about it like you did to tell them, I mean, you got time. We all got time.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
this has been great. Merry Christmas to you, and I'll see you in January when you come to the house.
That sounds perfect. And I'm just always such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm so in awe of your achievements. I mean, you are the queen of YouTube. And
Uh,
I love you and admire you. And I hope you have a wonderful.
well, that throw it right back. this is what we can easily say back at you, because I followed your career before I even got to go see you. And then after I saw you the 2 or 3 times, I really followed it. And now we all can connect a little bit better, and maybe by example, show some of the brand new comics that you don't have to have 4 letter words and off color stories and do that. There's a lot of funny stuff. It's just funny because it is.
It is.
Well, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry
I'll
Christmas.
talk to you after the holidays.
All right. See
Bye
you
bye.
on the 8th. All right. Bye bye.